Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of Midday Discourse on Global Television. My name is Samuel Odi. I hope you all are having an amazing week already. So today we'll be looking at, US trajectory and the whole electoral process and election coming up, and we'll be focusing majorly on the 45th president of the United States of America, known for his controversial policies and proactive statement and unconstitutional political style. On Saturday, luckily, he was able to escape or survive a planned assassination, which almost took off his head, but luckily, it was just a bruise on his ear. The Secret Service were able to rampage and then salvage the situation, took him off stage and a sniper gunned down the shooter at the rally, which was happening at Pennsylvania. That was on Saturday. So on today's edition, we'll be extracting, the political angles of all of this and why is it that the 45th president of the United States of America was attacked at this time, given the fact that elections of the presidential elections will be coming up around November this year. On today's edition, I have my guests live here with me in the studio in the person of Mr. Emmanuel Ozemena, who is a policy consultant. Thank you for joining us on today's edition.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir. So, it's just been a lot that has been happening locally in Nigeria, but in US, but let's just focus more on what's going on in the US right now. Why do you think, this attack was on Donald Trump at this dire time that the election is almost around the corner?
I think the question shouldn't be why do I think the attack is on Donald Trump. The point is that political season anywhere in the world usually comes with tension, comes with stress, comes with the unpredictable. So perhaps the shooting on Saturday on the Republican Party presumptive presidential nominee, Donald Trump, was one of those things you could see in happening unpredictable, unexpected, but it happened. But good enough or luckily enough for the candidate, he survived it, even though in the attack, one person lost his life, and as well as the attacker and some other attendees who were severely injured.
Okay, let's look at this angle of him being president. There were a lot of policies, key policies, and accomplishments of Donald Trump's presidential era as the president of the United States. Do you think maybe one of those key policies and things that he set aside is one of the reasons why maybe some Republicans and some Americans are not really favoring him to come back and run for office, looking at the angle of a whole lot of corrupt charges that he has in court?
Well, I think it's in leadership. The moment you take up leadership position, one of the things that expected to happen is that you're going to have supporters, you're going to have critics, you're going to have opponents. But I think as President Donald Trump acquainted himself as a leader, even though not every American or every other person would agree that Donald did well, each time he speaks about how he turned the economy around. Under Donald Trump, there were more jobs than people available to do the jobs. I think that's the best any economy can have. But then, his politics are very unique in terms of he shoots straight from the hips. I mean, he doesn't care whose us is God. He speaks frankly like a statesman, not a politician either. Quite a lot of politicians may not may not have favored his style of leadership. But then, mind you, Donald Trump all his life has been a CEO. So he, like somebody says, he will hire you on Twitter and fire you on Twitter. Yes. And then if you check his style of leadership, it's like running a business. I mean, he said, well, XYZ, I'm going to hire him as my Secretary of Homeland Security. And in fact, he's a nice guy. So that's how CEOs hire people. I mean, when they identify a talent, when they identify something that they think they are interested in, they hire you. But again, he also fires as he hires.
Yes.
Yeah. So Donald, not everybody may have liked him, not every American, not every Republican, not every Democrat. But I think as president, like he keeps saying, he did acquaint himself. So, I mean, just like any other leader, he has his supporters and he has his critics or opponents, if you may.
Yeah. Okay, looking at it now, you said he hires, like, he runs his government like, like a business, right? And all his life he has been a CEO. Do you think that's like the best approach for every other leader to like handle governance?
No, every leader comes with their own style. There are leaders who would want to consult and consult. There are leaders who think, well, I have identified a talent who I think will bring some value to my government. Let me hire him. Then I can go and explain to my team, well, I just think these guys should be bringing XYZ capacity on board. Because why do you even hire people? You hire people because they are bringing additional value to what you want to do or what the overarching objective of your organization is. That's why you hire people. So each staff, each member, each team member is coming with a certain capacity, capability, strengths, that would add value to the entire organization. That's what government is all about. Meaning that you identify, you talk to the people, you try to get them to your side, and then you say, oh, come on, join my team. And for me, that's what leadership should be.
Let's look at Trump's political ideology and agenda. Mostly a lot of persons have said it differs from the traditional Republican or controversial view. So do you think he's like swaying away from the constitutional angle of the Republican Party?
Now, what happens is, take for instance, President Biden has been in politics. He was elected to the Senate in 1972. So 72 to now, it's over 54 years. Yeah. So, no, I think, it's over 50 years. So what it means is that the approach President Biden would be, his leadership approach would be that of a political leadership, some sort of consultative, some sort of, he would take a decision, but he's likely going to make it look as if he's a collegiate, sort of a collective. But for Trump, who had run very successful business, he thinks if anybody is not bringing any value at any point in time, you have a right as a CEO or the president and commander-in-chief to drop that person. Trump keeps talking about the swamps, around Washington.
Washington, yes.
Yeah, he kept that. These are political bureaucrats who hang around on every administration. And if you check Trump cabinet, there were people from the private sector. True. I mean, he's Secretary of State Ben Carson, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, a neurosurgeon who had made name in the sector. Yes. I remember I read Ben Carson's interview where he was trying to talk about his achievements as the Secretary of Urban and Housing and Urban Development.
Yes.
He talked about, that he knew that the black people are more likely not to have access to housing. They are more likely to be disinherited from access to housing. And he chose that position. He would have been, for instance, Secretary of Health and Human Services, but he said, look, I'm a black man, I'm an African American, and this is where I think I'll bring value to my people. And he brought quite a lot of value. In fact, what happened was that by the time his tenure ended, President Biden had to appoint another black congresswoman to be able to carry on the achievements of Ben Carson. So what I'm saying essentially is that for Trump, politics should be for service. Politics should be to deliver, value to the ordinary people. And if any government agency or governance is no longer doing that, then there's no need to have a society. So I think he's more of a pragmatic human being, a pragmatic leader who wants to see results. And if there's no result, he would ask you, why do we need to keep this? Why don't we defund it? So people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, were tired of Trump. But again, the ordinary Americans seems to be on his side. Yeah. So the question is that, is it the professional politicians or the bureaucratic politicians that we should listen to, or do we listen to the ordinary people? If ordinary people say, look, Trump, 45th president of the United States, is coming back to become 47th president of the United States, he will come back. I mean, there's nothing anybody can do. In fact, the polls are out in his favor. President Biden is trailing slowly behind him. In fact, within the Democratic Party, in the last couple of weeks, following the first presidential debates organized by CNN and all that, you find out that Trump rating went to the roof. And the the Democratic Party were waiting themselves as we speak now, all throughout last week. They are saying, look, the President Biden must make a decision whether to remain in the race or to drop. But their biggest challenge is who are they going to replace him with? But again, that's also the tragedy of politics anywhere in the world. I mean, whether Nigeria, whether in Europe, whether in America, or anywhere. How could you have had 4 years and there's no plan B?
Plan B.
Because that's what it is. 4 years of governance, 4 years of building everything around one person. So now it's difficult because in fact, as at yesterday, delegates started arriving at Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the Republican convention is supposed to happen. And it's only by President Biden who can take a decision now and say, look, I'm not running. But he said, look, I have the support of my family. So Democratic Party as it is are trying to
salvage the moment.
But I don't. Let's see how it plays out.
Okay, we'll be going on a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll be looking at the impact of Donald Trump's presidency on the U.S. economy, and also you made mention of professional politicians. We'll also be looking at those, but we'll be going on this very quick break, and then when we come back, Midday Discourse continues. Please do stay with us.
Time check. It's midday. Then it's Midday Discourse. Midday Discourse is a program that covers trending local and international news, current issues, and human-related topics. Join Samuel Odi weekdays 1 p.m. on Global Television. The discussion starts here.
Yes, many thanks for staying with us on Action, Sammy said. Yes, not my own Sammy, the other Sammy in the MCR. So we'll be looking at now, before we get into the impact of Donald Trump's presidency on the U.S. economy, trade policy, and international relations. Let's look at, you made mention of professional politicians. Can you elaborate on that so we could, have a vivid, understanding about this?
All over the world, you have people who change from, the person comes to the parliament, say about 30 years ago, he moves from the parliament to the executive, back again, or back again to run as a mayor and all that.
So they just go around in circles.
Yeah, in fact, there was a recent, there's a lady in U.S. Congress who is representing a district in one of the states at the House of Representatives. And at the beginning of the year, she said, I will not be seeking for re-election, at the end of my tenure. She went out there to run for the mayor of her city, and she lost the election, and she came back again and said, "Oh, I will be seeking for a re-election into Congress." So the point is this: at a point in time, I think people should have a break and go do other things. Yeah, but what we have found most of the time is that these guys would sit in all through 50 years, 60 years. They are doing business of governance. Yeah. So for Trump thinks people should leave whatever they are doing at every point in time. Test the other part of life. So you remember in 2016, his campaign team was, "I'm going to drain the Washington swamp." So he knows that, look, these guys are there. Whichever government is in power, either they are appointed as advisors, all kinds of. And in Nigeria, you also have such people. In fact, in Nigeria, we call it Ajip. Any government in power. He moves from one party to the other, and just to remain within that power circle. So for Trump is saying, look, you need to go get experience on the street, on the other side of the street, on the other side of life. That's why even the people who consider themselves leaders of the Republican Party do not like Trump. But meanwhile, mind you, before 2015, Trump was not a member of Republican Party. Yeah, because in the US, it's a lot open in that you can decide to join a party at any point in time, and then you can run on behalf of that party. So people who were thinking that they have a right, that is their divine right to emerge as a candidate of as a presidential flag bearers of Republican Party, lost it. And you saw ahead of the election, including former President Bush, or Secretary of State and all that, they all issued a statement that we're not going to support Trump. And there was something about the 2016 election and Trump.
Yes.
In the US, over 95% of the media, because media usually will endorse candidates, endorsed the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as their preferred candidate.
Yes.
Trump had little or no support. But the ordinary people on the street perhaps were, whatever message Trump
was passing,
had crafted, had disseminated, it found resonance in them. It resonated with them. And Trump won the election. So perhaps what we need to do is sit back. I'm sure there should be PhD students somewhere who are trying to study social movements, political mobilization. Perhaps there should be a Trump theory of political engagement. Because it seems to have worked, and it seems to be working again. Because if you look at, across board, Trump, by the pollings, would likely win this election in November.
Okay, let's hold on, watch, and see what happens at that point, and see if Trump gets to win the election come November. Okay, now we're still going to rest a little more on Trump on Trump's matter. What was, his impact? It was said that he brought out, he revamped the U.S. economy and then created more jobs, that they had more, citizens to work on it. So how did that, affect the international relations, yes, and then the trade policy?
Okay, Trump, for instance, believes that, look at his theory of economy, that you shouldn't tax corporations. Clearly, what is the idea of lowering taxes on the corporations? Very simple. If corporations pay less, they're going to have more money available to them, and they are going to expand their operations. And they will hire people.
That means it cuts down taxation.
So for corporation, corporate company taxes.
Yes.
Yeah. So companies had to employ more, and then also his America First policy was clear. America First policy simply say, look, if you're an American company and you're producing abroad, bring it back home. Set up that factory at home. If you set it at home, you're going to enjoy a lot of tax breaks. And that tax breaks would have a way of enabling you have more money, provide more jobs. Because his argument is simple.
Yeah.
If an American company manufactures in China, what you have done is to export American jobs away, abroad. And quite a lot of companies came back, reviving their factories, their production lines, their plants. And that's what also helped the economy. That's what increased a surge in job. Other countries were talking about job losses, but here you now have more jobs than even the people can take. So, but at the international level, countries where this manufacturing are done, like China, wouldn't be happy. He also had a policy around steel. In the history of steel industry, iron and steel, iron and steel essentially drives technology. America was one of the prominent, steel manufacturers. Suddenly, America started importing more steel than they manufacture. In fact, factories across the U.S. were closing down. Trump said, no, we're going to increase tariff on steel. And that tariff angered virtually the whole world. China, Vietnam, EU, who had seen America as a dumping ground for their steel products. Japan, if you watch the reaction of global leaders around that, but for Trump, he's saying, look, we have an economy, we have a country, we need to build, we have an industrial sector that we've not paid attention, so we need to revive it. And he was virtually at the point of bringing it back to, the good old days. In fact, in terms of protectionism, I think he had a clear-cut economic protectionism, and which helped to increase the tempo of economy within the United States. So as a leader, he's nationalistic, which every leader, I think leaders across the world should take that very positive policy threat from Trump. By the time you open your economy to all kinds of it becomes a dumping ground. And that would most times kill the local economy, especially where you have a comparative advantage. So for Trump, he was clear. Now, when you come to the issue of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, he's saying, look, the United States of America pays over almost 90% of NATO budget. And what does NATO do? How does it benefit America? To protect Europe against the Russian invasion. He's saying, look, America is across the Atlantic. So whatever Russia is doing may not affect them directly, but is their allies in Europe. And he told them clearly he's going to cut the America part of the budget, and he didn't pretend about it. And as we speak now, I read an article in, I think, one of the international magazines a few weeks ago, that the entire Europe, Brussels, they are a little bit unsettled about the reality of Trump presidency. They have seen it, it will happen. So their calculation now is that how do we navigate it? Even though it's going to be 4 years, but it's going to be 4 years of storm. Trump has said publicly that you could resolve the Ukraine-Russian crisis. It's a very simple thing. Part of the key reason why some of these conflicts are there is geopolitics, geopolitical interest. People are trying to demonstrate supremacy. But there's also soft diplomacy. There's also another side you could take. But most times they are spurred by what has been identified in development circles as the military-industrial complex. People need contracts. People need to buy equipment. People need to kit the soldiers. People, all kinds of things. So those guys could trigger it off. Sam, if you, on a good reflection, the current global economic crisis is exacerbated by the Russian-Ukraine war. How? Now, between Ukraine and Russia supplies over 36 to 38% of the global wheat, market. They control it. The war has led to some sort of
decline,
stoppage. I mean, apart from a few seasons where agreement was done to allow passage of commodities through the Black Sea, which lasted for just a few months. Countries in the Middle East depend on Ukraine for access to
those grains,
to grains, which forms part of their staple food. I mean, across Middle East, across Europe, most of the food they eat is actually baked food, and is the basic ingredients is grains.
Grains,
So also the spike in the cost of energy it's also as a result of that war. Russia supplies the gas market in Europe. Now the war has started. Quite a lot of countries in Europe say, look, don't supply to us. America say, we are going to supply you. But how much can America do? That's the first question. Apart from, I think, Germany that say, look, we're going to keep our trade relations with Russia open. Because there are no alternative. I mean, that's the closest they can get. You need to lay gas pipeline, massive one. Nigeria has got Trans-Sahara, Middle East, Europe gas pipeline. But it's not completed yet. And so part of the global economic crisis at the moment is hinged on the Russian-Ukraine war. But nobody wants to admit it, because if you admit it, it shows the primacy of Russia in geopolitics. So all they need to do is to pretend it's not there. But if you do your analysis, if you collect your data, you find out that these are the key drivers of the economic crisis. It's only a very few people who will accept it. But I think a Trump presidency would be able to resolve it.
All of that.
Trump looked like a master when it comes to managing negotiations.
Because obviously he has been a CEO all his life, so he's used to having negotiations in his boardroom. But let's look at this other angle of Trump's administration addressing issues like immigration, borders, and security. And again, the wall that he built to secure United States. What do you think? What impact do you think that had on immigrants?
Which country in the world will open their border and say, "Come ye, all ye that are weary, come and join us"? Every country in the world wants to admit people who are bringing value to their economy. I mean, if you have in your deposit, your bank balance, if you have say $5 billion, and you go to any embassy and say, I want to visit, they are going to issue you visa the next day. That's why they say, can we see your bank statement? Yeah. So every country in the world wants to admit people who are going to bring value to their overall goal as a nation.
Yes.
So if Trump say, look, let's create control at our border, I'm not sure he has done anything wrong. But again, this is Trump, a Republican. Republicans usually would want to create a border control, checks, and what have you. But for Democrats, their policy is throw the border open. But again, if you do an analysis of the number of people who are deported from the United States, between Trump and Obama, Obama deported more people out of the United States. But again, the media in the US are mainly pro-Democrats. So those media were silent on that Obama's deportation. And to score a political point, they will need to highlight the wall that Trump is building. So Trump walls becomes the epitome of anti-immigration, anti-foreigners, and what have you.
At some point, he was almost tagged the racist.
Yeah, but it's all political leveraging, political advantage. But I think, assuming I'm a spokesperson for Trump, what I would do is bring the data and say, let's look at it. How many people did Trump deport in 4 years? Let's take Obama's first tenure and put them data, speaking to data, crunch the data. So that's that. But again, it's expected. Obama is an African American.
Yes.
So being an African American means he's coming from what they call the minority sector. So people are likely going to listen to him. Unlike Trump, who is white, who has a German heritage. So invariably, it's about mindset. Like I gave you an example of Trump appointing Ben Carson as his secretary for housing and urban development. Because the biggest issue black people have
was housing.
Is housing in the inner cities, in the ghettos. So any policy that would transform those areas is likely going to put power, it's likely going to put empowerment, it's likely going to put resources in the hands of black families. And that's what Ben Carson concentrated in doing. And that's a whole lot of, it happened under Trump. But nobody would want to highlight it. Nobody.
Okay. Well, we'll be still looking at the differences now between the Republicans and the Democrats. But before we do that, we'll be going on another quick break, and then when we come back, this conversation continues. Many thanks for staying with us. And like I rightly mentioned before we went on a quick break, we'll be looking at the difference between the Democrats now and the Republican parties on their platforms. You know, the debate now that was held between President Biden and former President Donald Trump, it looked like the philosophy of both parties are obviously different. But now, how effective is that debate now going to play in the coming elections for the two parties?
Well, I think the debate looks like, you could say, a preamble to the election. Usually it says that the morning gives us an idea of what the day will look like. In that debate, without trying to sound like as if I'm rating the candidate's performance, but it's obvious in terms of who is ready to lead. And perhaps that's what would have prompted even the Democratic Party to start thinking about the possibility of replacing President Biden. In fact, it has happened only twice in the history of Democratic Party. First was in 1952. Harry Truman was going to run for a third tenure.
Yes.
And it was rightly his own. In fact, they've just made a law in 1951 limiting presidency to 2 terms. But he had a right to run for a 3rd term because, the law, he was already in place, already in office before the law was made. A pressure came that, look, Harry, President Truman, you hadn't done so well.
Yeah.
We think we'll lose this election if we go with you. Pressure came, unbearable pressure, and Truman suddenly had to make a decision that he won't be seeking for re-election. And that happened. And Democratic Party lost that election.
Yeah.
Then again, in 1968, Jeff Kennedy was assassinated in Texas in 1963. So his vice president, President Johnson, took over in 64. It took over in 63. By 1964, there was an election which President Johnson ran and won. By 68, President Johnson had a right to seek for a 2nd tenure in his own right. The party went into huge crisis. And in the moment of that crisis, they finally had to settle for the younger brother of former President Jeff Kennedy.
Yes.
Robert Kennedy, who was his Attorney General. He ran and became the presumptive presidential candidate of his party, the Democratic Party. That same night in Los Angeles, California, where they were doing victory party, a post-convention victory party.
Yes.
A certain Palestinian Jordanian came there and shot him. He was assassinated. That same night, he emerged as the presumptive candidate of their party. And by the time the election was done in November 1968, Nixon, who originally was defeated in 1959 election by Jeff Kennedy, became the president of United States. He was elected. So how Democratic Party are able to navigate this crisis,
yes,
it's what is left to be seen. But again, the debate was obvious on where each candidate stands. Trump hasn't changed. Trump is still Trump. He said, look, this is what I intend to do. This will be the focus of my policy. And for Biden, he also reiterated his policy, pro-abortion, pro-immigration, and all kinds of things. So, but I think the real people who would decide in November election will be the people of the United States. They're going to decide whether Trump political economy it's what they want to have, or Biden's liberal economy is what they want to have. But it will be a tough decision to make. But But the indicators on ground today say Trump is leading. Trump may likely be elected. Trump have the ace. But you know, the closer we get to the election,
Yes.
you could see other dynamics play.
out.
But I'm not sure any other dynamics will play. Incidentally, if what I'm hearing, because I've followed Trump campaign closely, is true, Trump may likely shock people with the choice of his vice presidential nominee.
Yes, because I was actually coming to that, but now that you've mentioned it, what angle now do you think he's going to take his running mates?
In fact, everybody is thinking it's likely going to be Tim Scott. Senator Tim Scott. It's from South Carolina. A senator of the United States of America. He used to be in the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Might likely
Be his running mate.
I read a report, I think yesterday, Tim Scott will be taking a wife, obviously, who will become the second lady. so it's going to be a shock to pundits, to analysts who think Trump is a racist. Trump has said it publicly that he will want to pick a vice presidential nominee who can replace him should anything happen. You know.
Yeah.
So the coming days,
they are just more.
I mean, it's just by the convention will be ending on Thursday.
Yes.
So by Thursday, when he unveils his vice presidential nominee, I'm sure it's going to be a shock to a lot of people.
Well, definitely that will be like more of a developing story. But let's, come back. Look at, there are obviously many key issues that is going on in the political space in the United States. But what are the key issues in the current political landscape now? And how, do you think, any of these candidates now, which is either President Biden or Donald Trump, how do you think, what approach would you think now that would use to settle them? Because Donald Trump has been clamoring, make America great again.
Well, it's obvious. If you look at I think the President Biden hasn't managed the immigration crisis very well in terms of, I think, if you ask me, he should have completed the wall that Trump was building.
Okay.
The wall is almost about 87% completed. If the last time I checked.
Yeah.
So what would have happened, because the moment you don't secure your border, you're going to have all kinds of people coming, and that could spike. You could have a spike in crimes, could have a spike in all kinds of things. The question to ask, why do you think countries around the world, especially the developed countries in the north, are doing development activities, or what they call overseas development initiative in developing countries, is to ensure that you have stable economic activities in developing countries that will dovetail into young people remaining in their country, curtailing what you call irregular migration. Because the moment you do it, it has a way of impacting on the local economy where they are coming from, and they are likely going to remain there. So in South America, a whole village will wake up and say, we are heading to United States.
Yes.
And they will be trekking, coming in droves, and there's nothing you can do. But if you have a wall, it's going to take them quite an effort to climb.
Just like a movie, Game of Thrones.
Yes. yeah, but if the wall is not there, they are actually going to pass through the
barricade.
The barricade, and then they are there. And the moment they are there, it's even more difficult removing them. So the question is this. Americans may need to make a choice. I have spoken to quite a lot of people who are saying, look, in my city, because you have cities that have been declared sanctuary cities. Yeah. In my city, we have very close to my house, there's a place they are keeping people who came from so and so, and people are not happy. It's the way, even in Nigeria here, where people have complained about people invading Nigeria from our neighbors and all that. They are not documented and all kinds of things. And the impact on the economy, the impact on security, the impact on social lifestyle of ordinary people. So that's also how Americans are feeling. But let's see how they vote. But I think for Biden, one of the four key issues the Democratic Party will be going to the election with will be immigration, will be abortion, because Roe and Wade were upturned in the last 2 years, a year plus now. What is Roe and Wade? In 1973, what they call abortion on demand. There was a ruling by the Supreme Court on abortion on demand. You know, that gave people rights to abortion, that imposed some sort of responsibility on the state to fund access to abortion.
Abortion rights.
Yeah, but the recent ruling of the Supreme Court about a year plus ago has overturned the entire process. So then the issue of the Supreme Court, 2 justices of the Supreme Court will be retiring in the next couple of, based on age, might likely go. So the next president of the United States will be appointing 2 justices who will retire by age. So the issue of control of the Supreme Court, at the moment, the Republican Party have, I think, 5 associate justices. While Democratic Party have 3 associate justices. So each time a ruling is given, you can gauge it and know the political leaning of each of the associate justices.
Yes.
You know, the chief justices most of the time would not want to be part of the voting, but except there's a tie. So that's also an issue. Another issue will be the issue on the economy. If I'm Trump, if I'm his campaign manager, I'll be asking, I will ask Americans, is your life better than it was 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
Usually, Ronald Reagan was the man who popularized this. He was asking people when he needed to campaign against former President Jimmy Carter. He asked them just one question: is your life better 4 years ago than it is now? You know, so it's going to be a big issue. Economy will be a big issue. The Ukraine war led to a spike in prices of gas. In fact, about a year and two ago, there was even crisis of access to commodities. I mean, somebody says shelves were open because they had problem, you know, being able to get food, baby food and all that. So, and it was a huge issue. One of the things that happens in the developed economies is that the citizens are more conscious than in developing economies, because the citizens are going to ask, what is in it for me? Am I better? Is my life better 4 years ago or what? You know, so, but I think it will be an interesting campaign by the time in the next a week or two, when the 2 parties would have finalized their convention. The post-convention process, they are going to hit the streets. It's going to be a real campaign. But like President Biden said a few years ago, he said, look, we need to tone down the rhetorics.
Yes, you know.
I think I liked that part of weighing in and say, look, this is about choice.
Choice, yes.
Yeah, whoever wins.
Wins. Moreover, he has the support of his family, so at the end of the day, he's still going to go back home and have a good meal with his wife and kids and have a proper dinner with extended family. So whoever wins. On that note, that's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Midday Discourse. My name is Samuel Odi, and many thanks, Mr. Emmanuel Ozemena, for joining us on today's edition.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for your in-depth analysis on the subject. So on that note, we'll be drawing the curtain for today's edition. I'll see you all tomorrow. You have a great day ahead. Good afternoon.